Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Pointless Top 10, a show where we make top 10 lists out of pointless things. Why are we flying by this pointless statue in Booty Bay? Because inside pointless things are treasure. Let's begin. 10. Number 10 is the Serpent Shrine Cavern elevator, and this is a fun elevator. It's got a cool frog head in the middle of it. It kind of reminds me of a Slan from Warhammer actually, but I think it's a Naga or something. I have no idea, but I think it's really cool. Everybody always talks about this elevator as like one of the original elevator bosses, right? Because if you didn't get on in time, it would go bzzz, then you'd fall and die. Also, this isn't an elevator boss video. This is just elevators that I think are cool. Some of them are elevator bosses, but I know that's like a thing. People would be like, he didn't put the elevator boss on the... That's been your annual me talking about a metaphorical person that doesn't exist but probably does exist point of the video. But aside from that, I think this is cool. I always like raids when you walk in and right away you have to go on an elevator or whatever it might be, and then it goes like it takes you down into the raid. It feels like you're getting prepped to go do this big fight or something. I don't know. Not every raid, but I think it's cool every once in a while you get something like that. And that's what this was. So, you know, you're going all the way down into the cavern, right? And so I think that's pretty neat. So that's why this is number 10. 9. Number 9 is Tel'Rador, and we stay in Zangarmarsh for this one. And Tel'Rador has this elevator that comes down, goes in a little bit, and then goes out a little bit, and then goes back up. Or the opposite way, whatever. But it's always notorious for being that elevator where you're like, oh, time to get on, and then you fall through the little gap because it hasn't done its little, like, back in yet. So that's it. It's kind of a funny elevator. I don't know if they were designing this elevator and thought of that, like everybody's gonna be falling through, or if they were just like, this would be a cool design for an elevator. Because I think that's what happens a lot of the times. They're just like, this seems like a cool thing, and then they don't realize the amount of people that are gonna go through frustration from it. But it is a cool elevator, I will say that. Also, I was reading a little bit about Tel'Rador, and it was built on an island of the Zangar Sea. This centuries-old monastery served as a retreat for Draenei anchorites and spiritualists before the exiled ones were decimated by the orcs. A small order of anchorites and vindicators maintained a number of shrines in the region. What is an anchorite? Anchorite is an honorific title the Draenei use for their priestly practitioners. Oh, look at that, double learning. Double learning, oh boy. That'd get you beat up in school. Luckily, we're not in school anymore here. And then another fun fact is Tel'Rador does not have food vendors, and for lore-based reasons. Many of the quests relate to food gathering, and because they are close to starving, food is shared among their own people, and they would not sell it to outsiders. I never knew that. I think that's really cool. Honestly, I don't even think I realized they don't have food vendors either. So, either way, I think it's, Tel'Rador is a cool place. It's got a cool elevator, although slightly annoying times, but it's unique, and that's why it's number 9. Hey. Number 8 are the Undercity elevators, and the Undercity elevators are one of this is just a classic elevator, right? Like, everybody's been to the Undercity elevator. You go there, and you're like, I gotta get on the elevator, and then before you know it, the door just slams shut in your face, and you gotta stand there and wait for like 20 seconds like an idiot. But there's also sometimes people get caught in the doors or stuff and people died in here, or they get in and then the elevator's going and they fall and die. So there's some wacky stuff. In fact, according to Wowpedia, at one time there was a glitch in the game so that a character running towards the opposite wall of a descending elevator would fall through the world into Stone Talon Mountains and then Alterac Mountains. This may suggest that Blizzard used a vertical system for zone placement in addition to the existing horizontal one, creating another reason for not allowing flying mounts in classic content. So that's actually interesting. I never knew that, but the main point here is that these elevators, it felt like I was going to a NASCAR race, you know what I mean? Like you're on your mount, you're like the elevator, you try to get there, and then all of a sudden it's like, that isn't a NASCAR race, that doesn't make sense. I guess I'm more of just a race to get to the whatever. These are cool elevators, and they were always annoying to get through on my Taran because you had to demount because it was dumb. But that's fine. And that's why they're number 8. 7? Number 7 is the Aldor Rise elevator, and it looks like a very basic elevator, right? It's just a giant structure with the elevator going up and down, and you're like, okay, what's so crazy about that? Well, the fact that you would go to this elevator and then people would want to get down and they couldn't because they'd have to wait for the elevator and they'd be like, you know what, I'm just gonna jump off. Or some people get on the elevator and then it'd start going down and they'd be like, I won't die if I jump off now, and then bam, they were dead. And so you would just see a bunch of skeletons scattered across the floor of the bottom of the Aldor rise, and it was just a death trap of an elevator, like. And it was all because people weren't patient for the most part. There was probably some people just clumsy or just kind of not paying attention, but usually it was impatient people being like, I'm not waiting 0.8 seconds for this. Also, I always like the Aldor rise more than the Scryer rise, and I think it's because it's partially attached already to Nagrand. So like if you're part of the Aldor, you would just walk out into Nagrand, like cool, but the Scryer, they were just like stuck in the corner, and it's like, okay, why would I want to be there when I could be attached to Nagrand? You got the, you know, the back exit into Nagrand, you go down a little mountain and stuff. Like, it was pretty sick. And then the Scryer over there being losers. So I think you realize that I picked Aldor over Scryer, and that's the right choice. And that's why this is number 7. 6. Number 6 are the excavation lift elevators in the Howling Fjord, and I love these elevators because there's just so much cool aesthetic behind them, right? These big stone wolf dragon head things. Actually, is that a wolf or a dragon? I don't know. I think it's a dragon now that I'm looking at it a bit more, but I remember first coming here in Wrath of the Lich King when it launched way back when, and I remember doing the little intro area and being like, oh, this is fun, and then I remember getting to the elevator and looking up and being like, dude, that's pretty cool. I was like, whoa. I mean, it really is cool. Like, you're getting pulled all the way up a mountainside, right? And into this big animal dragon head thing, and you're getting into this little cage. Because all the other elevators up to this point were like, you stand on platform takes you up, platform takes you down. But this was like, you're getting into this cage, and you're just like, what the shit? It was, I don't know, there's just something different about it, and it really had this aesthetic ambient feel to it, making you feel like you're in this different place, right? Northrend, I'm in the cold wilderness, and, you know, it's a bit more rustic and all that, I don't know. And so it's not an elevator boss, it doesn't have any crazy backstory or anything, but I think it's pretty cool, and I got some nostalgia with it, and I think some other people will too, and that's why it's number 6. 5? Number 5 is the Stormheim lift elevator, and this one is just kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and it's for a Forsaken encampment. I guess they just needed to lift stuff up a mountain, which would make sense, but they didn't do a very good job of attaching it, because as you can see there, it's not even attached. So I don't know if they're using some dark magic, or like Sylvanas is doing something, pulling some strings to get this thing going. Maybe literally pulling some strings, I don't know. Because it's it's not attached. I think it's kind of funny that throughout all these years, they've just been like, hey, you know what, just leave it, it's fine. But it's still a pretty cool little lift elevator, you know, it's not like Howling Fjord, where it's got this big dragon head and all this stuff, but I think it's a little more hidden, I think it's a little more unknown and mysterious, and that's why I moved it ahead of the Howling Fjord elevator lift, because to me, Pointless Top 10, the reason I made this series was to kind of shine some light on the more hidden things in World of Warcraft that you don't normally see. And that's why if I'm going to do like statues or board, like whatever, a lot of times I'll show things that wouldn't normally make somebody's top 10 list, because to me, it's the little unknown details that are some of the most interesting, right? Like, not everything has to be like, this is the best thing, this is the greatest thing. Like, sometimes the things that aren't that great are the greatest things. Kind of like when you eat fast food. Sometimes you know it's not great, but man, in that moment, it's pretty great. And so what I'm saying is, this elevator lift is just like fast food. And that's why it's number 5. 4. Number 4 is the Antorus elevator. And the reason everybody loves this elevator is it's one of the only elevators in the game, if not the only elevator in the game, that will squish you if you're under it. And I feel like this is another design choice that they probably did on purpose. Although maybe not, but I'm pretty sure they did, especially because when it squishes you, it turns you into like meat or something. I don't even know. It's also a very kind of, you know, it's almost like a gotcha type thing. Like, you run up and then they allow you all to gather around and you're like, where's the elevator? And then you're like, oh, and then it comes down and squishes you. So for that reason alone, I think this is one of the probably funniest elevators in World of Warcraft. It's probably one of the best elevator bosses in World of Warcraft, but I think just in general, it is a pretty cool elevator. Like when you get to the top, you see all the planets and all the crazy holographic things. You know, it's got all the green stuff all around. The actual elevator itself has like a skull thing in the floor. It's really cool. Like outside of the obvious stuff of it squishing you, I think this is a nice location. The elevator's pretty neat. And I mean, there's not much else to say about it except don't stand under it. And that's why it's number 4. 3. Number 3 are the Thunderbluff elevators, and these are easily some of the most notorious elevators in World of Warcraft, because, I mean, this city is literally an elevator city. Like, there's only a couple ways to get into this city. There's flying in, and there's taking the elevator. That's it. There's no other ways. Well, you can take portals, but at least back in the day, there used to be no other way. But still, if you want to walk there, I guess you could say the only way to get up is by taking the elevator, which are, again, somehow powered by invisible strings or magic or something. But from what I was reading, the engineer Palehoof, who is the Taran engineering trainer, is in charge of keeping the city's elevators and windmills in good working order. So look at that. All the elevators and the windmills you see in Thunderbluff, Engineer Palehoof, he's the one doing it. He's the one doing the crazy magic to keep these things going up and down without any visible strings. And prior to the construction of the capital, Thunderbluff, the Taran had lived as nomads for countless generations, often under the attack by marauding bands of Centaur. With the Thunderbluff's founding, however, the proud and good-spirited race was finally granted a permanent home. I love just having this big city on mountains and being able to look out over the landscape and see the Great Plains. And I think the elevators really do just add to it, like having to go up and down the elevators every time you want to get into the city, especially back in Classic WoW, where you really did have to do that, or you'd have to just get a wyvern and fly in. And it's just, the view is amazing. And there's also the fact that you could just fall off the mountain and die. Like, you can fall off of Thunderbluff and then you're dead and you got to take the elevator back up. So that's kind of funny. But overall, I've always loved these elevators in Thunderbluff, and I had to put them on the list, and that's why they're number 3. 2. And number 2 is the Blackwing Descent elevator, and I don't know what it is, but whenever I think of an elevator boss, this is the one I think of, and I don't know why. I know there are some better elevator bosses out there. Like, I'd say the Antorus one's probably the, I think, best elevator boss, but there's something about this one that just always ties back in my mind to, like, this is the elevator boss. And I don't know, maybe because it was such an early on time in Cataclysm and I was playing the game then. I remember this is the raid that I made the Jimmy Got Ganked video outside of. It was like, Jimmy got ganked outside. So that maybe that's part of it, but I do remember going into this raid and falling victim to the elevator boss, because you clear the 2 side bosses, and then, you know, it's like anything else. People get impatient. People start messing with other people, doing like the slow fall or whatever it might be. And then before you know it, everyone's just falling. And the guild leader's like, what are you doing? What are you guys doing? Blah, blah, blah. So, I don't know. There's just something nostalgic about that. Plus, this is just a cool area for the elevator, right? There's all this lava and these dead dragons, and it's like this underground city. It's honestly really cool. I love this raid. Like, Cataclysm, for as much as I'll bash it, it's got some cool stuff in it, right? I think that's how it is with a lot of these expansions. Even if I didn't have fun in that expansion, a lot of the art and the music and the raids, like a whole bunch of stuff, is just really cool. And so that's another reason I love doing these pointless top 10s, is to go back to those places where I'm like, man, that place sucked. And then I look around, I'm like, yo, this place is actually pretty sick, especially now that I don't have to do it. And so that's why it's number 2. 1. And number 1 is the Great Lift in the Thousand Needles, and specifically Classic WoW, because new Thousand Needles, it's not the same, man. Like, old Thousand Needles, going onto that lift, dropping down into this big, almost like Looney Tunes-esque area, like the Salt Flats. You know, you had Shimmering Flats over there. You had all these crazy animals running around and Centaur. Like, it was just a wild experience. And you look up and you're just surrounded by all these big rocky needles, and everything was set up by the Great Lift. You know, you go over here and you get on there and you just drop down. And it kind of reminds me of everything I've been talking about with the raids, right? You get on an elevator and you go down into the Serpent Shrine Cavern, or you, like, you know, go down into wherever you're going. And so this is kind of a similar thing where you submerge yourself into this zone and you look up and you're like, damn, this is crazy. And I've always loved that about Thousand Needles and the Great Lift. And you know, there's a reason it's called the Great Lift. Like, this is one of the greatest lifts in World of Warcraft. And whenever I think of elevators, I think this is the most notorious elevator that I think of. Like, I always think of going here and dropping down in the Thousand Needles and the amount of people that have fallen off here, or people fighting on here and then jump off or get killed and fall off. It's great. I've always loved it. It's a beautiful area, you know, great sunsets, great sky, and I really do love the Great Lift and Thousand Needles, and I hope that if they do redo the old world, that they bring back the old Thousand Needles that isn't flooded. And then they could give us a brand new Great Lift, the Great Lift 2.0, and that'd be pretty cool. But for now, this is number 1. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out this episode of Pointless Top 10. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube lingo. Also, if you want to check out some other Pointless Top 10s, we had Pointless Top 10 houses in the middle of nowhere last week. We also had Pointless Top 10 forges the other week. You can check that one out as well. Okay? Okay. See ya.